Stritto.
Did I call the right number?
Yep.
Great. Hey, Frank, what's our movie tonight?
You told me it was The Stranger.
That's correct, it is.
Okay, and once again, I am shocked that you were able to do this. Once again, the best movie on anywhere broadcast in the country tonight is on your station. The Stranger is a very fine movie. I really envy anyone who hasn't seen it and is going to watch it tonight. It's 1946, directed by Orson Welles, and it's kind of film noirish, but it's Welles is conforming as much as he cared to Hollywood requirements, so he makes a real thriller. And Edward G. Robinson is best. Orson Welles is in it, as well as directing it. Loretta Young is there, and it's a very fine movie. 1946, the war was just over, and this is a search for a Nazi war criminal. And there were, if I can give a little history, you break in when you want me to change what I'm doing.
No.
There were two movies that year of Nazi war criminals. One was Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious, which takes place in South America, and the other one was the Orson Welles movie The Stranger. And I'm not spoiling anything for people to say that Edward G. Robinson. You learn in the first 5 minutes Edward G. Robinson is on the trail of a Nazi war criminal, and he tracks him to this little town in England, and we all know it's the Orson Welles character, but for the next hour it's kind of a cat and mouse. Can he convince himself? Can Edward G. Robinson convince himself, and then get the proof he needs to bring this man to justice? And I'm very fond of this movie for a couple of reasons. I saw it at a tender age, but I really enjoyed it, even though it wasn't into my age group. And this was a big hit, and so was Notorious. And with that came the whole genre of Nazi war criminals. And my forte is horror movies. And a lot of the schlock horror movies I grew up with had the mad scientists were renegade Nazis who had escaped Germany and were carrying on their nefarious work all over the world.
So there is a connection, a kind of subtle connection.
Yes. Well, I mean, we had these. Really, when you step back and figure out what the Nazis could, scientifically in the technological field, what the Nazi scientists had done compared to the rest of the world, they had gotten way ahead. And, our space program, it's an overstatement to say our space program was developed by guys that used to work for Adolf Hitler, but, starting with Werner von Braun and working your way down, there were a lot of former employees of the Third Reich who wound up being employees of both the Soviets and the United States that built rockets. So growing up in the 50s, there was this whole mystique of, what have these guys discovered? They had discovered all sorts of things that we're still using today. Synthetic fuels, because it was all neat. They had no oil. They were running out of coal. They came up with synthetic fuels. They came up with synthetic materials. They came up with synthetic food, and they were doing all these terrible experiments. And what did they find out with that? And that became fodder for the cheap horror movies that I grew up with. But it also became fodder for some very fine films, and two that probably the two best were 1946, and you're showing one of them tonight.
65 years later.
65 years later, now we're making movies about I guess they don't make movies about Nazi war criminals anymore, but and I guess we don't make movies about communist agents anymore. So now we're making movies about terrorists, but the theme is the same. The murderer is among us, the enemy is here, and I hope we can recognize him, et cetera, and can we out him?
And we got 30 seconds left, Frank.
Okay. Well, what else can I say? Orson Welles. I didn't know it until you told me today, and I did a little more research on the movie than I would have otherwise, that there is 20 minutes missing out of this film. And people will notice it's kind of abrupt that Edward G. Robinson is trailing a known